Johnson, you're the most emotional person I've ever worked with. I was like, I actually
Oh,
don't normally get that feedback. I've ended up working with a lot of all male teams. And so I was a little feisty. I remember saying, like, I really want these babies and I thought I was going to lose them. And like, how do you think your daughters would have felt?
the world is obsessed with fast track success. It's easy to think that people become successful overnight. But let's face it, more often than not, what we see on social media is total BS. I'm here to look past the perception of perfect success and focus on life's detours, perceived mistakes, and even wrong choices, and understand the real road traveled up the career ladder. After all, we're all effing up. Christy Johnson is an entrepreneur, intrapreneur, and educator. She juggles many hats. She is scaling fourth startup, Artemis Connection. She facilitates courses at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. She is adjunct faculty at the University of Washington, where she teaches entrepreneurship and has built a Women in Entrepreneurial Leadership program. And Christy, in partnership with her husband, Kyle, is raising a daughter and twin boys. Christy believes that people are an organization's most important asset, and through having a diverse workforce, organizations will have the most innovative solutions and best strategies. Christy has 7 years of experience working in corporate strategy, including spending 3.5 years at McKinsey. Christy's list of achievements is long. However, I need to mention a few. Christy was an award-winning economics and mathematics teacher, recognized by Junior Achievement and its National Teacher of the Year. She created a talent acquisition and development program for a $24 billion conglomerate that resulted in bringing new, young leaders for Silicon Valley, which resulted in strategic partnership with top universities. She was a VP at Flextronics, a $24 billion manufacturing company, where she led a corporate strategy team's turnaround in order to yield more innovative strategies and pilot new initiatives. And most recently, Business Insider recognized Christy as a power player in consulting. Christy holds an MBA from Stanford's Graduate School of Business with a certificate in public management. She also has a master's in education from Stanford School of Education. Her undergraduate degree is in economics from Western Washington University. Christy's accomplishments are beyond impressive. Christy, welcome to Effing Up. With a bio like yours, it's hard to even imagine that you had moments of effing up. And I'm really interested to hear your behind the scenes take on your story.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this. And there are many, many moments of effing up. Your pick where we start.
If you think back to your younger years, maybe as a child or in high school, do you feel like you had a plan for what your future would hold in terms of your career?
It depends on the phase that you go with. I feel like there's always been this common thread that I didn't realize until later, which is
Yeah,
like
of course.
absolutely love learning and I like problem solving and like really hard problems. My mom has these funny pictures of me like doing workbooks or we go to the store and be like, can I have the logic puzzle book? Like things like that. So that I think is this common thread. But I grew up in a really rural community. About 10% went on to college. That's if you include community college. We didn't even have AP classes when I was there. I was trying to get them to come into the school. And so I feel like it was a very narrow set of what it is I saw as possible. And a lot of that was honestly driven by TV. So I thought, oh, maybe it would be fun to be a pediatrician. I loved my pediatrician. I thought science was interesting. I like kids. So it was a pretty narrow set of careers I thought were possible. And then it's funny because I remember in high school, just some random conversation with a teacher, and he said, oh, have you heard about consulting? You might like consulting, like it's problem solving. I was like, I don't even know what that is, but oh, you get to travel? Maybe I would like that. I don't necessarily felt like I had a plan, but I was driven by wanting to learn and placing myself in places where I could learn.
In a community where it sounds like most didn't go on to college, how did you get a grounding for going to college and even know how to take those steps and move forward?
Yeah, well, it's so many things. Very fortunate that my parents really value education. My father actually didn't go to college. He went back later, and he and his siblings hadn't gone to college either, but like my grandfather was on the school board. So education was something that was very much valued by both sides of the family, which is wonderful. And I'm so grateful that they imprinted that on me. And then I'm in these schools, and again, it's a small town, right? But there's like lots of gender norms on what women should do. And even things where I was like, oh, I think I want to be a pediatrician. And the guidance counselor's like, don't you want to be a nurse? Like, how would you do that with children? And I feel like I just didn't really say anything. And I was embarrassed. And this is one of the regrets I have about liking to learn and having it come relatively easy to me. I would lie about my test scores or not share my test scores because I didn't want people to know, because that was really counter to who girls were supposed to be.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was tricky.
You go on to college.
Yeah.
You went to Western Washington University. What were challenges you faced as you became a college student and into your college experience?
Yeah, there were certainly some. So I went to the college that was 15 minutes away from home, primarily because financially I needed to. And I needed to be able to stay close to home. And there's some complications that made it hard for my parents to fill out the FAFSA. And like, it was just a very complicated phase of life. And then I got a job like the Monday after I graduated from high school because I knew I would have to contribute to college. So trying to go to college and working is really hard. You're trying to map out your classes so you can have a big enough block of time to be able to work. And then you end up missing out on so many of the extracurricular things that are happening. So I was a mess, especially my first year of college while I was trying to figure all of this out. And it's a hard transition anyways, but there were a lot of things that would end up happening. And then I did, which is my pattern of like, well, I'll just load up on classes because I like to learn, and then I'll be distracted from the fact that this might not be the experience I totally want, but I'll have a bunch of classes. I'll be really busy and I can't think about it too much.
Yeah, if I'm overloaded, then I can't think about how overloaded I am.
I can't feel like any sadness that this isn't the college experience I thought I would have. Yeah. So my husband jokes because I think I ended up with 6 years of credits and 4.
Oh my gosh.
Because it ended up being fine. But when I contrast that with grad school, where I had more of a real college experience, I do feel like I missed out on a lot of the fun sorts of things. So my challenge was really trying to pay for college and have a good college experience at the same time. And I chose to optimize for academics, not the social aspect.
Do you feel like it came to a head for you at any point because you were so overloaded and focused on in school, completing school, having money for school? Did that show up for you?
I think it's I think back to that age, right? 18, 19. Like it's really hard not to compare yourself to everyone else, right? And it feels like everyone else is having fun and having this amazing college experience. So it certainly was hard. And then I think the other thing I especially wrestled with my first year was like, what do I even want? Because the wonderful thing about university is like there's all these classes. So, and that's why I took so many of them. I was like, oh, I like geology and I like anthropology and I like economics, and this part of math seems really interesting. And so that kind of like, who am I as a human and what do I want, not what do I feel like I should do? That was very much my first year of college. It was a big struggle.
What happened as you were leading up to graduation and thinking about what would be next?
Fortunately, I have an amazing partner who I was dating throughout college, and he's great. And he's also from the same small town. So I think there was like some understanding of the complexity of that. And then when you're in a relationship, you're trying to navigate like careers, right? Like, oh, you might get a job in Seattle and I might get a job in a different area. Like, what does that mean for us? And how do we make all this kind of come together? I was really fortunate. So towards the second half of my college years, I locked in with a set of professors that were incredible, right? They took me under their wing. Like I got to do research with them. I underappreciated for so long how much they helped me and that they saw something in me and gave me opportunity, because that ended up turning into a job experience. And I was like, oh, I'm not quite sure how I feel about this. And then like I'm old. So 9/11 hit during my senior year. And if you remember, it tanked the economy. So it's not a great time to be graduating.
No.
And so, my fiance by that point ended up taking a job in Seattle. And then I was like, how can I get something close enough? So like we can at least have one anchor in the ground and we can figure out how to make a life together work, because that was super important to me too. But having somebody to navigate it with was really nice.
It looks like your first job was as a high school math, economics, and history teacher for the Bellingham School District. What was it like being on the flip side? And now you're educating kids, and you, up until this point, you've been the one that's been educated.
Is that funny? And it was then this is strong theme of learning, right? And I really did feel, because a few teachers and a few professors really saw something in me and were great in speaking to that and inspired me, that I wanted to pay some of that forward. And then I'd always been interested in future of work. Because what do my kids say? I'm supposed to say I'm a geek because geeks are cool. I don't remember. They have this whole thing on like nerds are not cool, but geeks are cool. But I'm probably messing it up. But anyway, because I had this theme of like always liking to think about the future and like innovation and inventions and all of that, that future of work was a topic I was interested in. And then if you started to look at the jobs of the future, math is fundamental for most of STEM, and math isn't taught very well in public schools. So I was like, oh, I'll go teach math. Right. The other topic I was really interested in was diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I can think through girls, I can think through kids of color, I can think through kids that maybe are lower income and make sure that they have some skills that will equip them for the future. And math and then economics I wanted to bring in too, because I think like economics is math with people and explains so much of how the world works. And it usually isn't taught in public schools either. So I was like, that would be really fun. And so that was my first job, like 22, and a classroom of kids not that much younger than you, where you've taken like one class on behavior management. And it was a great first job.
I can't help but think how loaded this situation is that you've just described. Number one, you're taking on fundamentals like that lead into STEM, which back then are not quite popular like they are today. So like those listening, maybe in a younger generation, they're like, STEM is normal and it's so big, but it's come so far. And back then it was like a glimmer. So there's that. DEI, that also was like under the covers. No one used the acronym DEI. We didn't openly, like from my recollection, spend a ton of time on discussing diversity, equity, inclusion, and what that meant and having structure around that. You seem to be really advanced in your thinking and how you wanted to participate in that, both in the current and thinking about the future. But I have to imagine that it's not like you had a team around you being like, yeah, preach it. You've got it in the bag. Was there resistance to where you were at and where your thinking was at?
Oh, yeah. As you can imagine, like there certainly was, because I was lucky because I did have this one professor who I felt like really equipped me and grounded me in a lot of the research on what was happening. And then how the gap ended up just widening for kids through K-12. And I was like, gosh, that's too bad, right? And so that was very much top of mind. And she was a cheerleader and a champion for me. And I was really lucky. So I think one thing I underestimated early in my career that for a long time actually, was around how important the leader is within an organization you're working at. But I was really lucky that the principal, the first place I taught, was incredible. He wanted to know every student's name. He was like wiping down the lunch table in his suit and tie at the end of lunch. And so he really imprinted in us that all kids matter. And he also had a bit of my back, but I'm sure I was a pain in his side because we do things like hand out the unpacking white privilege. And there's this great article. And then a whole bunch of parents got upset. I sent that home as a reading. So that was fun. It might have been the first time the school board got a call about what I was doing. The second thing was I decided with my economics class that they should run the student store. And so let them set prices because they learn about supply and demand. Well, if you sell an apple fritter for $4, and again, this was a long time ago, people might not buy it. And then what are you going to do? You can't eat them. So like you're going to have to think through the market. And then the school cafeteria got upset because they thought our store was like impinging on the revenue of the school. And it ended up being a great teaching moment because we were able to talk about like monopolies and who has control and what does that mean for consumers. But I was always experimenting like that. And I know it drove some of the other teachers nuts because they would tell me. And then I was fortunate that I had a boss who like gave me some air cover when I was trying some of these things.
How did it feel when you had opposition and like you said, something even got risen to the school board level? I have to imagine that wasn't easy to digest.
No, no. And it was not. And I think this is because I tend to have a bit of like a reformer in me. Shouldn't the world be a place where everyone can participate? Doesn't everybody think this way? And then I get frustrated when people don't, or when I hit resistance where it seems like a policy or something that's frustrating and bureaucratic. That was hard. And I think the other thing that was hard that I really struggled with was like I wanted to be part of a team where we were all working together on these things. And it was hard to find like those teams of people.
Mm.
And there's a lot happening. And again, this is when suicides were starting to creep into the classroom, like opioids were hitting. We didn't know how bad all this stuff was, but there was just so much pressure and stress. And I did not do a very good job compartmentalizing it at all.
How did the stress manifest for you?
Well, I mean, same pattern, a little bit overwork, where I was like, oh, I need to do more, which I was like, I look back, I'm like, I was so naive and foolish. Like there were big systematic things happening that me with 150 students a trimester couldn't really do that much about. But I just felt this like compulsion to do more. And then if I missed something, I still think back, I ended up losing a couple of students to suicide. And I was like, could I have seen something? Should I have said something? Should I have brought it up with the counselor? So I would ruminate on situations like that in probably a pretty unhealthy way.
Wow. I can't imagine getting the news that one of your students had committed suicide.
Oh, it's awful. I swear it was every Friday before a break. Some kid would be in my room, awkward silence. And then it'd be like, how are you? And I'm pregnant, or like I'm cutting, or like my boyfriend's meeting me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with this? So,
Wowza.
yeah. And then the suicides, those hit me every single time, even now when I hear about them.
Mm. Are you able to separate out taking it personally?
I think that's part of the reason why I needed to change a few things. And that led to me going back to grad school, because I was like, I'm not able to right now. And the only job I've always known I wanted was to be a mom. And I was like, if I don't figure this out, like I'm not going to have anything for my own kids someday. And like, I've got to figure out how to be better at managing myself and setting boundaries. And I don't think I can do that if I'm still in this environment. So maybe if I go back to school, I can figure some of these things out.
Yeah. Going back, you were in your early 20s. You taught there for 5 years, which is a long time, but you were still like at the end of your time there, you were still in your on the early side of 20. And you and I are old enough to know that you don't know yourself in your 20s. And to carry the burden of a suicide of someone that's hardly younger than you, that I could not have managed that. That is heavy, really heavy.
Really heavy. And then you layer in students that were homeless, students where there might be abuse in the home, really unhealthy relationships. I know. I was just like, this is
God.
so heavy. And like, what can I really do in an hour a day, like in my classroom?
You have this picture of what a teacher deals with, and it's like, well, teacher shows up, teacher teaches, teacher leaves. And you're really lifting the veil. I'm oversimplifying. Not a lot of us spend time thinking about all the complexities that a teacher has to deal with. And that makes my life feel really uncomplicated. From there, you went to Stanford and you worked on your MBA and your Master's of Education, because why do two master's programs?
So I'm going to do one to start with. I started with just the MBA and then added the master's in ed.
In true Christy style, let's load it up. Were there any challenges during your time at Stanford? I know earlier on you mentioned that you were able to have a little bit more of a balanced, I'm using my word, not yours, experience than you did perhaps in college. But were there any tripping points for you along the way?
Yeah, but I think the biggest challenge was it's the first time I lived alone. So my husband's job really wanted him to stay, and they were in Seattle. And so they were like, why doesn't your wife go to school? And then we'll pay for one or the other of you to fly back and forth, and we'll give you a housing stipend. So it's the first time actually both of us had ever lived all alone, which is kind of weird, right? To be in your
That
late
is
20s,
really weird. Yeah.
yourself for the first time ever, going through this really transformational experience. And so that was certainly hard. I mean, I think the other thing is like, I didn't go to a fancy undergrad. I didn't go to private school. I wasn't a Teach for America teacher. I was just a regular old public school teacher. And like at the class at Stanford, I mean, I still remember the opening day where they're like, I'm making these numbers up, but 6 Olympic athletes in your class, and private companies that have had over X million dollar in exits. And I'm like, wow, all I did was teach high school. Like, what am I doing here? So that, I think that imposter syndrome very much flared up for me on, I don't know what I'm doing or what I'm talking about. And a lot of the classes were pretty different for me too. And so it did take a while for me to figure out or get comfortable with, I'm here for a reason. I don't know what that is right now, but they let me in, so I might as well not second guess it all the time, which is my own learning I had to do.
Yeah. Imposter syndrome a bit there, huh?
Yeah, big time, big time.
You joined McKinsey following your master's studies. What was it like entering the world of McKinsey?
I don't think I fully understood what McKinsey was, to be honest with you. And I think this is part of, I don't know, this is like a bit of a pattern too, where I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. It seems like they're good people. I'm not going to overthink it too much. Somebody suggested I should go into consulting because it'll help me see a lot of models in the for-profit world. Consulting seems great. There's only 2 companies in Seattle. And my logic had been, well, McKinsey doesn't have an audit arm, and so the other company did. And so I won't travel as much as if I go to McKinsey. So I show up at McKinsey, and I still remember like I wasn't sure if I wanted to take my offer or not. I had another offer that paid more and that would have paid for my second year. And I kept getting advice to take the McKinsey offer. And I also wanted to be with my husband. So this idea of not traveling as much was really appealing. And so I was talking to somebody who's trying to convince me to accept. And she's like, it doesn't matter if you're only there for a year. Just come for a little bit. I was like, I still don't understand what the job is. And she's like, it's just problem solving. You'll be fun. And I'm very grateful to this person because she did talk me through a lot of it. So then I show up and I'm like, what is this job? I mean, I remember the first week I had a wonderful team I was working with, which is, I think this is the part of leadership matters a lot. And it was this kind of 2-week sprint. It was really interesting what we were working on. And we were driving between locations, and the engagement manager who is driving opens up his laptop and he like starts working while we're driving. I was like, can I drive or can I type? Like, can I do one or the other? And he's like, you got to learn how to maximize your time here. I was like, okay, can I drive or type? Because like, I do actually want to safely get to where it is that we're going. And then it pulled some really long nights the first couple of weeks. So I was like, is this normal? Like, how late do you normally end up working? There's one person who I think I was still like pretty insecure about my background, especially the teacher part, because I always seemed to puzzle people that I was like a former teacher. And so I felt like this one guy was, I don't know, like poking at me a little bit about it constantly. And so that created, I think, a little bit of conflict that was unnecessary. And again, I wish, because I think I've gotten a lot better now at being direct on, like, hey, what's going on? It just feels like there's conflict. I don't want to have that with somebody I'm working with, but I wasn't as good at doing that early on in my career.
And it wasn't the norm to be outspoken as a female in the workplace. And also, you're new, so you're probably afraid to speak out to some degree. It's intimidating.
Yeah, and I think
right?
there was some of it too, where I was like, I don't know the space. Like, I don't know the for-profit world. Maybe this is just how the for-profit world is. So I'll observe and watch and try to figure out how I can make the environment better. I'm taking a lot of that on.
What do you think the poking at you represented? Why did that individual take that approach, do you think?
That's a great question. I've come to get to know this person a lot better. I think it was his own insecurity flaring up. There was this saying when I was at McKinsey that you hire slightly insecure perfectionists and you keep them insecure. And so I think as new people came onto the team, depending on how the leadership dealt with that, it could cause things like this to show up. So that might have been part of it.
It's almost like the individual didn't understand you because of your background being unique, and that was intimidating that someone that wasn't just like them could be so successful.
And then I think I was insecure. So things that were probably questions of curiosity, I was feeling a little bit more exposed than I may have if I was just like, oh, maybe he genuinely wants to know,
Hmm.
not questioning everything I've done in my background. So I'm sure it was some of me too.
Hmm. Why did you decide to leave McKinsey? You were there for about 3.5 years. What prompted you to move on to group health cooperative?
My daughter was born, and I think I had been considering leaving a bit earlier, primarily because it's really hard to get pregnant while you're at McKinsey because you're only home a couple days a week. And so I was like, and the clients that I love serving meant that I would be on the road Monday to Thursday, and that was just the reality. And so that was something that I was considering. And then my husband was at Washington Mutual, and Washington Mutual imploded, as did the entire banking industry in 2009. So I was like, okay, he supported me while I did school. Like, it's my turn to suck it up and have the greatest impact I can. And sure, I'm traveling a lot more than I would want, but that's what I need to do as part of our relationship. So she was born, and I initially was like, oh, I'll take normal maternity leave and then I'll be fine. And she rocked my world. Never would have thought. I love to travel. And I was like, I don't even actually care if I leave the house. Like, I'll just stare at this
Yeah.
little human, right? I don't need to go anywhere. And that, I still can't believe how much she changed what I wanted and what I wanted professionally. And every time I talked about coming back, McKinsey talked to me about travel. And I just knew it wasn't going to work with how I wanted to be as a mom. There weren't a lot of examples at the time on the West Coast that were moms the way I wanted to be a mom. And we're also in client services and client facing, which is what I also wanted.
How did that feel?
Oh, I still remember the day I quit. I didn't come back from maternity leave. And I was like, am
Mm.
I hurting all 30-ish-year-old women that go out on maternity leave because there hadn't been very many of us who had babies at that point in the Seattle office. And I was like, I don't want to make people nervous. I don't want to hire women, or I don't want to staff women who are pregnant because they won't come back. So I was very nervous to have the conversation. And I had my talking points that I rehearsed. My poor little baby had heard it a million times, right? Where I did make sure I wanted to voice my appreciation, because I absolutely have appreciation for all I learned there and the experiences that I had. And it also wasn't what I wanted now that I had this baby. And it was a hard conversation. And the person I talked to was wonderful and very understanding. And I think at the time, because I didn't have that many working mom role models, I was a little bit earlier on the MBA side for my class or at McKinsey to have a baby. And so at the time, there was part of me that was like, well, I just can't figure this out, right? Like I'm sure everyone else is able to, which is probably a whole host of things that were happening. I've since come to realize how complicated so many things are in terms of being a working parent in a hardcore job. But at the time, there's a little bit of me that's like, okay, I don't know if I can figure this out, but I'm going to go to a place that's maybe more mission driven, where I don't have to travel, because that'll also let me show up as I want to as a mom.
Why did you choose what you jumped into at Group Health?
Healthcare had been my platform at McKinsey. I think going through the experience of having a child, and then also I had a harder time getting and staying pregnant than I had anticipated. So I'd experienced the healthcare system in a different way than I had. And I was very drawn to the mission. So the fact that you have an integrated healthcare company where you have the payer, so the insurance company, and the provider in the same place, it feels like the incentives were aligned to actually do some really great things for patients. And the person who hired me that ended up leaving 6 weeks after I was there. But I remember it was great, right? Because I was in his office interviewing, and they had all these charts up on the wall. And one was about access, like how long it took to get care after you had a need. And we were just having a conversation. He's like, what would you pursue if you were to come into this role? I was like, what? I want to pursue something that'll have a positive impact on people. Definitely care about that. The second thing is, if I look at the metrics on the wall, like the access thing seems like a pretty big deal. So I would actually want to make sure that people could get in to get care after they had a need. And that would be something I'd probably focus on first. She was great. He's like, great, what do you need? And he let me, and I made a whole bunch of mistakes for 6 months. But he let me pilot and experiment with some things for the 6-ish weeks that he was there while I was there. And then he did set me up with some good leadership that would let me still be what I now call intrapreneur within the system. But I felt at the time that it was a space that I knew. It was healthcare. It was a cause that I cared about. I wanted healthcare to be better for my kiddo and our family and other families. And then the pace seemed much slower than when I had worked at McKinsey, which in retrospect, I should have realized any pace would be slow. I don't think I had good enough perspective at the time.
You mentioned you made some mistakes during the 6-week period. What are you alluding to?
I think, well, okay, so you come from, you're a consultant, right? So like this, the speed that you have to work, because clients are paying a lot of money. And so then you're in-house in an organization. And like, you have to be watching how much the organization can digest. And then it's repeat relationships. You're not going to go away. You're not going to have a 10 to 16 week study and then move on to another one. And so I feel like some of the mistakes I made was the speed that in which I wanted to work and the sense of urgency that I felt, instead of like really studying the culture and understanding what worked there and the pace that mattered. I made mistakes. There was a cooperative, but I would use terms like competition, and they're like, we're going to have a list of banned words Christy can't use. I remember this one leader, he was like, competition, you can't use that. Like customer, you can't use that language. And so I was like, wow. And I felt like I'd made this woman really mad. We ended up actually being close over time. But I think just spending a little bit of time understanding. So the thing that gave me advice on early on, which was really helpful, was just really respecting the people that worked there. So I would do like these show and tells. I'd go to them. I'd go out to whatever clinic they were at and I'd be like, show me whatever you think I should see. And we're like, let's spend some time talking about it. So I felt that as a consultant, I may not have prioritized that because I couldn't directly link it to a deliverable, but being in-house, spending the time, letting people show me what was important to them, really built some strong relationships, and going to them made a really big difference. And then another pretty big mistake that I made was I hadn't had to think about operationalizing strategy. So even little things like, when with this idea I have, when will the CFO have to write checks? And does that make sense? Do they know they're going to have to write checks for some of the investments that we're wanting to make? Have I set expectations correctly with the groups that I'm working with, that there is actually budget and we know how to tap into it? So one of those things around operationalizing strategy that I just didn't understand either.
You were there just under 2 years. And then again, by looking at LinkedIn, the next 2 years, there's some hopping.
Mm-hmm.
You go to point B for 5 months. You go to A Plane for Mom for 9 months. You go to Flextronics for 9 months. Talk to me about that 2-year period and what that represents.
Yeah. And so another mistake I made at Group Health was when the person who hired me ended up leaving, I ended up reporting into a boss that just was not a good fit for me. And it was a really unhealthy reporting relationship. And there are a whole host of reasons why, but I think I stayed too long in that particular role. I should have left much earlier. And it was very clear this person didn't like me and didn't. And she got upset because I applied for an internal role and I didn't talk to her about it. And like loyalty was her most important value. So I didn't directly address any of that at the time. And it ended up being very stressful.
What were the dynamics? You say it was an unhealthy relationship. What did that look like?
So I'm a big relationship person. And then I think all relationships matter to me. So it doesn't matter to me if you're like a frontline employee at one of the clinics, or if you're the data person that maybe doesn't like to talk to people, but is really good at data, or if you're a senior executive, or if you're a board member. Like, to me, all people, all humans, all hopefully here for some consistent mission. What was hard for me was, I think my boss had a different philosophy and was really wanting to advance her career. And that meant that the executive relationships were really important to her. And I should be very much behind the scenes. But I should also always have her back because loyalty was the primary goal. So it would be things like she'd go get her hair and nails done in the middle of the day because she didn't have time to do it. And then I would have to like unexpectedly go cover for her at a meeting, but I shouldn't be too strong in that meeting. I should just take notes and brief her on what needs to happen. And then other pieces, like we were losing money and just did analysis to figure out what was going on. And she thought it was inappropriate, like that I had done that additional work, that it was out of my lane and I shouldn't have focused on that. I think it gets like at a core value because I do think of myself as a person like with integrity and who believes in trust and wants to do the right thing. So if something's going wrong, I feel like I need to be direct and honest and share that, and being told that I shouldn't, that was causing conflict. And then
She wanted a soldier.
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it was really hard. And I think I latched onto it because she was a working mom. She did have a child a year older than mine. So I was like, oh, she'll be able to help me figure this out. And the first day on the job where I was like, I mean, my badge picture, puffy eyes, because I cried all the way from daycare drop off to go get my picture taken and go to work the first day. And I remember the first thing she said to me was like, don't you sometimes just hate your child? She told me about like how her daughter had been so naughty in the morning and it had been such a difficult day. And I was just like, in retrospect, this was just kind of like her personality. I do think she was needling me a little bit, but I was like, do you not understand that I am missing my child so much? Like I've never left her this long. And that's what you're saying to me my first day here. I wonder how this is going to play out. It's just that kind of stuff.
Oh, it's rough.
It was rough. It was rough. So I stayed too long. And I think it was partially because I didn't want to look like I was hopping around. And then I had this year and a half of hopping around, which was all with people calling me with opportunities and saying, hey, I really think that you should do this. Hey, I really think that you should do that. And I remember being like, I can't switch jobs again, right? I'm going to switch one. I'm going to have 4 jobs in 2 years because I think that's what it ended up amounting to. And, or maybe 2 years and 2 months. But somebody was like, go look at the guys in our class from grad school. Like a lot of them have hopped around a lot. You're probably being too loyal and you're probably sensitive to it given the last job you just had.
It's also the time period where job hopping became more acceptable. Like back in the day, way back, no. You need to stay in your job for the entire length of your career or maybe 2 jobs. But, around this is like 2012, it's starting to feel like because startups are coming up again and, job movement is starting to feel like, oh, a normal thing. Not quite normal, but becoming more normal. So interesting. You were getting calls left and right. So what convinced you then to go from point B to the next place and then the next place?
Mentors have played an incredibly important role in my life. And so there's this amazing human being in Seattle who is a Stanford alum, and he welcomes alums up to Seattle. Because it used to be there weren't very many Stanford alums up here. And so he really wanted people to come and to stay and to love it. And so I remember he said to me, he's like, look, if you can manage a P&L and you can manage a team with skip levels, like sky's the limit. You can basically work anywhere. I was like, well, I haven't really owned a P&L and I haven't really had a team with skip levels. I should probably try to get some of that experience. So point B was consulting, and consulting I knew when I was at an alum event and met some really cool people that were at this private equity backed portfolio company. They're like, you should try it. Like you'll get to own a P&L, like you'll get a team. I felt I needed to actually own something. And so that was something that I wanted to do. And so in the private equity backed portfolio company, I would get to own something. And it ended up being really hard. And then I had boss call with the job of Flextronics that he called pretty regularly too. And the nice thing about him calling when I was a bit older, because he probably called a couple times a year with like, hey, I have a job for you kind of a thing. And so I found early on the jobs he was presenting, I was like, I don't want that. I feel like if I had been in my early 20s, I would have been like, oh, I should do this. It's like my boss. But I feel like I was better at saying, it sounds super interesting, but that's not what I'm wanting right now in my career for these reasons. And so the job that he called with the time that ended up jumping was actually perfect. And I found out by that point that I was pregnant with twins.
Wow.
So, and private equity backed portfolio companies, this was before Washington State had paid maternity leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew the job was going to still be really intense. And so he calls with this job, and I just gotten reorged to the chief sales officer, and sales officers just want you to hit your numbers. And so I'd had a challenging conversation with a comment about the right thing for moms to do. which I was like, oh, I don't know how this is going to be. I'm working under
Wait,
kids.
dig in there a little bit more. What do you mean?
Oh, it was just so I was like 12-ish weeks pregnant. I'd gone to Texas, closed our first new client in the space that we'd wanted to enter into that ended up being really profitable for us. Met with a senior candidate that we were hoping to hire. And then I had a bunch of complications. So that person on the plane, like crying the whole flight home, go right to the doctor and anyway, healthcare, right? You're sitting there and everything ended up being fine. So I go back in the office after a couple of days of rest and my boss is like, Johnson, you're the most emotional person I've ever worked with. I was like, I actually
Oh.
don't normally get that feedback. I've ended up working a lot of all male teams. And so I was a little feisty. I remember saying, like, I really want these babies and I thought I was going to lose them. And like, how do you think your daughters would have felt? And then he went on to make a comment about
Mm.
his wife knew after their second was born that even though she loved her job as a teacher, the right thing to do was to stay home. I was like, okay, like
Oh.
you have strong opinions on what my role should be and what my priorities should be right now. And I'm gonna go call my old boss who's called me regularly. And it was great. He came to town. It was funny because he's like, I'll come to Seattle tomorrow. I was like, not a good time. Like my husband has a work thing. I have the 3-year-old. I'm pregnant. Like you really don't want to. He's like, I'm coming anyway. So he brought somebody else with. We went to a nice dinner at Sea Star. And my 3-year-old's with me for hours. And then we were negotiating on the job. And I was like, if it's these things, I'd be more than happy. And he's basically like, as a working mom, write it the way you want to, and I'll support you. He had daughters. He's a lovely human being. And so then we're getting ready to leave. And again, I'm my little 3-year-old and I'm pregnant. And he's like, and I also think you're a really great mom. He's like, how cool. Your daughter was really well behaved. She got to see her mom negotiating. It's clear that she like
Wow.
loves you and you guys have a strong attachment. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're the person I want to work with. You're gonna make this happen for me as a working mom.
Wow. What an amazing call out. Instant, like, gosh. Oh, you just called out how great I did in front of my child. Okay, sold.
I'll follow you anywhere. I mean, that's the thing. So that was why I ended up making the shift. It was a combination of events and it was a great boss to work for.
Mm. Mm. And then, so that was Flextronics.
Yeah.
And then you had a little bit of a gap.
Yeah.
Was that to be with the twins?
Yeah.
And before you ended up starting your own thing?
Yeah.
Talk to me about how you come to starting Artemis.
So I am at Flextronics and then the boys came 7 weeks early, which I think I was in the Bay Area Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday, my doctor's like, I don't think you should fly anymore. I'm like, cool. Thursday, I'm Skyping with the CEO, prepping a board meeting. Friday, going to labor 7 weeks early. And it was just a horrible experience. UW is an incredible hospital. And I think I was like, this is my fault. I was working too much. And we don't know, right? I mean, I was that person at the hospital. I was like, can you tell me like what caused labor? Are there more tests that you can run? And they're like, we don't know. I was like, okay. So along with that, like the NICU, again, I would not wish on anyone. At the time, Washington State did not have paid family leave. So you're seeing these families that are trying to debate, like, do I go back to work now and leave my baby at the hospital because I know I'm going to need leave when I get home? And then at the same time, the social workers were talking to the families around preemies. Stress in the home is really important. There's a lot happening at the 0 to 2-year-old time frame. Your baby needs to be putting all their energy to growing and developing and learning all the things they need to learn. So I was like, I'm in a stress case with some of my jobs because I want to do a good job. I want to take good care of my team, like all of these things. I'm not good at setting boundaries. I don't know if I can go back into corporate the way that I used to. And then at the same time, the first 2 years, we had all these doctor's appointments. Like one of them didn't walk until he was 18 months old. Like we ended up back in the hospital with some respiratory stuff. The doctors were hoping we could keep them out of childcare for 2 years. And work has always been really grounding for me. So I'm like, if I could just have a little bit of work, so there's something I felt like I was good at while I'm like also trying to navigate all this uncertainty, I think it will be a nice anchor. And at the same time, I was like really fired up with what I was seeing, which is just there's a whole bunch of people that want to work and need flexibility. And it just does not make sense to me that corporate environments don't allow for that. And I don't know if it was sleep deprivation or what, but I was like, that's the problem I want to solve. And it was always from a talent standpoint of if there's people who are out of the workforce or are underemployed, could we get them working at an upper end of their game? Because I think meaningful work is a very human need. And the way it's happening right now just doesn't allow for that. But I truly think it was partially because I was so sleep deprived. Because I'm not going to overthink this. I'm going to do a super low risk way, right? We won't have offices.
You're being humble. You've been in publications for the type of organization that you've created, something that allows flexibility so that people can manage their life. As a mom myself, it's never ending. It's just every day you feel like I'm failing. I'm not showing up in the way I want to. And you have to give 100% to all of it. And you cannot give 100% to all of it. So if you're able to carve out a different work experience that works for your family dynamic to make it more tolerable, for lack of better words, it's like a no-brainer. And you've created that. Your organization, how much has it grown in the last several years?
Most of our ramp came during COVID because I think we didn't lose a beat. Like we had already worked.
You proved the model, right?
Yeah. So we had no problem attracting talent. We were able to still do great work for clients. I think the great irony still is that we offered to help some of the clients learn how to work in a virtual or a remote world. And they mostly said no. And instead we're like, just do the projects we can't get done. So between 2020 and 2021, we grew 90%.
Oh,
the year
it's
after.
incredible.
Yeah, it's been wild. And I still don't understand that. It's an easy lever to pull. Flexibility is an easy lever to pull. You have to be very intentional with your people processes, and you have to have good managers and leaders. But if you have those things in place, you can offer flexibility.
Now, on the flip side of that,
yeah,
we know nothing's really that easy. And so you have this company that offers flexible work. You yourself are at the head of that company, and you advise and you mentor and you teach courses at multiple universities, and you take time to work on things for others even beyond that. I have to imagine that it's still a bit chaotic for you. If we lift the veil, what are we looking at, Christy?
it's chaotic at times. It's chaotic at times. I think when I look back at COVID in particular, if you think back to March, April 2020, it was like our lives were so out of control and we didn't know. And I feel like for me, it was almost like this primal instincts, which was like, I'm just going to go work a bunch. That has always been my MO, to distract. What can I control? I can control work. I could do a good job there. And so I really have to watch it. And that has always been my struggle, and I have to put some hacks in place. I was just sharing with the team because we're doing goal setting for this year, and everybody has a professional goal and a personal goal. And I was sharing my personal goal is like all jobs. That includes teaching, that includes the mentoring. Like I don't want to work more than a certain number of hours a week. And like I need to get my hours down. And so that means I'm stepping away from things that I used to be involved with and being a lot more focused and intentional. It also means that I have a really strong leadership team that I trust. And so they're getting to make more decisions too, which is great. And I try to map everything out. Like my kids are really into sports. So like my teaching nights are usually the nights they have sports practice until 7:30. And so we're all getting home at kind of the same time. But there are still these moments where the basketball schedule just came out for middle school and the games are on Tuesday at 3:45 and 5. And I was like, I'm in the classroom. I'm not going to make the middle school basketball games. I'm just like, it just kills me that I'm not going to be there. Or there's this moment last year where the kids were doing this like I am assignment in second grade. And so they had these posters and they're like, I am this and I am that. And one of the twins is like, I'm adventurous like my mom. And I'm like, oh, yay. Or like, I'm from a mom who's adventurous or something like that. And then the other one is like, I am from a mom who works all the time. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get these hours down and stop like this Pavlovian sense I have to when life gets stressful, which is like, I will work. So it's a work in progress.
Do you feel successful?
Yes, I feel super fortunate. The part of the reason I hesitate, this is some of the work I've been doing as of late. I have had way more success than I ever could have imagined. I have a very good life. I have work that I love. I have a family I adore that's healthy, which I will never take for granted. I have a great community. I have good friends. There's so many things that are amazing. I think the reformer in me is like, why can't I get more companies to adopt this flexible model? Like that. Because it's great. We have 75 people here. They have a good experience. It's not that many people. It feels like when I was back in the classroom where I was like, all right, so for 150 students, like hopefully they're getting a good learning experience from me and know that I really see them as humans and want to figure out what motivates them and tap into that and help them. And well, for 75 people, they get a flexible work environment. It's like, and then there's like hundreds of thousands of jobs at one company that we serve. We haven't been able to influence things there. So I wish I could spread the flexible model a bit more, but patience, I think at some point, I feel like it will be more widely adopted.
Everything takes time.
It does, time and patience.
Do you struggle with imposter syndrome?
I don't as much anymore, mostly because I think it means that I'm in my own head too much and I'm thinking about myself. So when I'm like, I still try to notice it, and there's certain situations that really flare it up. Seemingly enough, more actually on the personal front, where I'm like, oh, I didn't do the super fancy birthday party, or I wasn't the basketball mom who had the cool snacks and like the special hair ribbons. Like I didn't even think about that. So that I feel like I get more of the imposter syndrome, honestly, on the mom side of things. With the work stuff, I'm like, well, we work for demanding people. If we weren't getting results, they'd fire us. I should just rest assured in the fact that like we're delivering results for them and they would get rid of us if we weren't. And then I need to stop being so focused on myself and instead be focused on whatever problem they've given us to solve. The other thing that I think has really helped is there have been a lot of very successful people who've helped out, especially with the Women in Entrepreneurship program that I ran through the UW. And if we've taken to asking them, like, how do you deal? It originally started because we asked a very successful venture capitalist, how do you help founders deal with imposter syndrome? And he goes, what about me? He's like, I deal with imposter syndrome all the time. I'm like, wow, here's this person that you would hold up as like incredibly successful from all of the metrics we commonly look at in society. And he also wrestles with imposter syndrome. So maybe this is just some of the human journey. And like, if we didn't have it, we'd be a total narcissist. So notice it, realize it's distracting you from doing what you're called to do, and then kind of get out of your own head. I've gotten better at that, but it still does flare up, mostly on the mom stuff for me.
Looking all the way back in your career journey, what's the low point?
The low point by far was the job at Group Health. I should have left. I was trying to get pregnant the entire time I worked there. And then I leave and I get pregnant with twins. And I was 32. And we had done 4 rounds of IVF that didn't work. And my doctor, who's amazing, was like, this should work given you're under 32. And I remember saying, do you think stress impacts it? And she's like, no research about it. But the fact that I got pregnant with twins after I left, when I didn't think that was a possibility. And I don't know why I didn't leave earlier. I really did believe in the mission of what that place was doing. And there were a bunch of really great people I worked with. I also knew it was unhealthy, and I stayed way too long. And I was in a pretty bad space. And it actually ended up culminating the day I went to quit. My job was eliminated. So I went in with my letter, and HR was in the room. And I was like, I'm going to keep this letter and not say anything. And it's funny because I'd never had a job eliminated. I still took it really personally. It was super embarrassed. And I was like, wait, but I was going to quit. Like, what is this about? And so that was by far the lowest point in my career.
If you could go back and speak to your 20-something or even just prior to starting college self, what advice would you share? Environment
matters so much. So who you're working for and who you're working with is much more important than the brand of the company or the type of problem that you're working on, because those things will make or break you, and it will have a bigger impact on your physical and mental health than you realize. I really stressed about navigating a career and wanting to have children, and I tried to time it. I was like, I'll go to grad school and then I'll work this long and then I'll have a baby and then I'll work this long and then I'll have another baby. And I definitely don't want to have a baby around the holidays. And my babies are born in December and January. So a little bit later than I would have thought. And I wish I hadn't stressed about it
That's
so
karma's fun little gift to you.
a little bit. Exactly. Friday the 13th even.
Oh my gosh.
So I wish I hadn't stressed about that so much in my 20s because there's so much pressure to like, I need to go, I need to establish myself in this workplace because then I want to work so many years before I do this. And it was just a lot of pressure.
Mm. Let's jump into some rapid fire questions.
Mm.
How do you define success?
I think if I've had some meaningful work when I've been able to have a positive impact, and if I have some deep relationships where I've made somebody's day a little bit better, and I feel like I have a purpose, like that's pretty much success for me.
What was your dream job as a child?
I want to work at the post office. I thought it would be fun to organize mail. Is that funny?
I still think that'd be a little bit fun, to be honest.
Be a
If I
kid
could have
with-
headphones on and just really get into organizing that mail.
That's when I was 4 and 5. That's what I wanted to do. Work at the post
That's
office.
adorable. What's your path not taken?
I almost didn't go to Stanford. I was accepted to the UW, which again, a wonderful school, and paid the deposit at both schools. And Stanford was twice what I made as a teacher just to tuition. And it meant I was going to have to be living away from my husband. And I decided in 2 weeks before class started, I was going to go down there. So I could have gone to the UW. My plan was to do the evening program, keep teaching, and I know.
I have to laugh, Christy. That's so you. I'm shocked you didn't take that back. Good for
So that
you.
was not taken.
Good for you. You didn't overload there.
I was terrified, but I didn't overload.
If you could switch jobs with anyone, what job or who is it that you would switch with?
There's 2 areas I'm really intrigued by. One would be limited partners. So people in like pension funds, university endowments, they're deciding where to put money. And then that leads to venture capital investments and private equity investments. So I'm very intrigued by how they make decisions and if there's any sort of like diversity, equity, and inclusion lens there. The other area is actually private equity because we do some work in that space. I watched them turn around companies in a way that's actually created a tremendous amount of value, in some cases destroyed another. And then they've also like really accelerated people's careers. So those 2 spaces I'm very intrigued by because I feel like they have a ton of power and influence and could do a tremendous amount of good for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Fascinating. Yeah. Do you prefer remote or in-person work?
I really love people. So when I'm in person for a reason, I love it. However, remote increases access so much. And so I'm very torn. So I'm not going to directly answer your question. Like both.
By the way, that's how most people answer it. No shocker. What's an item on your desk that you cannot live without?
On my desk. Oh, I mean, probably my phone. Because I do a lot on my phone. It also gives me a good lifeline of what's going on with the kiddos too.
What is a word that drives you nuts?
Shareholder returns. It's not a word, it's a phrase. But I see so many people be like, doing layoffs the way we're doing them because we have to maximize shareholder returns. That's our obligation. So I do still hear that in some circles, and that drives me nuts. It's very short-sighted.
What actor would you have play you in a movie?
I had one person once say that my chin reminds them of Reese Witherspoon.
Ooh, take it.
I'll take it. But
yeah, that's great.
She's pretty awesome. Like Hello Sunshine, what she's been doing with media.
What is the company on your resume that has turned the most heads?
McKinsey, for sure.
I want you to think of 3 of your jobs and label them love, ultimate fun. Skip it. Don't need to do that again.
Oh, it's hard. Okay, skip it. Don't need to do it again. Group health. No surprise there. That one's easy. I do feel like building Artemis, the job I have right now, is really ultimate fun. It's so creative. I mean, you must feel that way with your podcast. And I wish women talked more about like how fun it is to create something and to get to create jobs. So ultimate fun, definitely that one. I do really love teaching. It's been great to be back in the classroom again. I do really love teaching.
Christy, thank you so much for sharing openly. Your story is amazing. I'm excited for others to hear about your unique background, starting with education and rolling into McKinsey, and then ultimately starting your own business and juggling being a mom along the way. Thank you so much for sharing so openly and being raw.
You're so welcome. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Effing Up. I'm your host, Deanne Reiner. If you enjoyed today's episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe on the platform you use to listen to podcasts. Share Effing Up with others, post about it on social media, and/or leave a rating and review. Until next time, count your perceived failures as part of your path to success. After all, we're all effing up.